Pat's one of those guys that if there's a problem out in the community, he's the first one to jump in.
I don't know if there's any person I've ever met in my life that's more purposeful and intentional about becoming a better version of themselves each and every day.
What I discovered is his God-centeredness is not in words, but it is in values.
Pat's impact on the business community and seeing how he built a culture at his organization where he embraces his team as individuals.
I've worked with Pat for 42 years, most of my life. He understood that if our feet stood still, that we weren't going to survive. You know, that we had to keep thinking creatively and finding new avenues of business.
He was a man of action. He was committed. He certainly was very aware of the vulnerable population that we were working with.
Pat leads his organization from the heart, right? So I really look up to Pat as a person, as a leader. He's just led by example over and over again for me, and he's just a wonderful person.
Thank him for his vision, for his relationship with my dad. It was pretty special. For caring about the people that worked for him. I mean, really cared about them. You don't find that often either. You know, most companies, I think, really look to the bottom line, period. I mean, it is important to sustain the company, but there were other elements to his character that spoke to his employees.
Pat was that business owner that was led by his ethics and his integrity, and the level of trust that people had in him was evident by how he viewed his company as having a responsibility to those who maybe lived on the fringes of society, and his involvement in the community to address the needs of those people who all too often are forgotten.
I worked with chronic homeless people. Once they settled in and had stability, could then go on SSI. Well, Pat realized there was that time in between. He, at the time, was getting an extra income. He took that income and gave it to us each month. I was able to set up people in apartments that never, ever would have been able to. And that's what kept me able to do what I did, because people supported what I did. And he was one of my chief supporters.
I was very interested, really, in inviting him to come on the board of the Catherine McAuley Center. And then at one time he said, well, you know, I'm not sure how long I really stay on boards. My response to him was, well, Pat, come, see. Pat came, he saw, and he stayed for 20 years.
About 15, 16 years ago, we were having a really bad cold snap. The state programs for heating assistance were down, they were cut. Pat came into my office and he said, hey, I have an idea. He said, you know what, every year at Christmas, instead of giving out gifts, I make a donation to fund a heating program to help individuals in the community. That conversation morphed into something called the Gift of Warmth program. Today, that program is in the six figures, between $150,000 and $200,000 a year. Pat and I sat there and said, you know what, if this is something we're gonna do, we can't take administrative costs out of this. There are United Ways throughout the country calling me on the phone saying, how did you do it? How did you put it together? That whole program is because of Pat McMahon.
Pat, there's just a little poem I want to share with you. It's on the street, I saw a little girl, cold and shivering in a thin dress, with little hope of a decent meal. I became angry and said to God, why don't you do something about this? For a while, God said nothing. Then that night he replied, I did do something about it. I made you. Pat, I do want to thank you myself for all that you have done. You have been an absolute wonderful supporter of the Catherine McAuley Center.
Thank you for being a friend, being a mentor, and being Pat McMahon.
Thank you so much for your friendship and the respect that you have given me over so many years. Continue, you are making a change.
We love you in this community. I love you personally, buddy. And thank you for everything that you've done for me personally, and especially for this community.
The question that we all probably need to answer in our lifetime is, how do we want the world to be different? Because we have lived. And resoundingly, you've answered that question by making your life about others. And for that, I can't thank you enough.